Tab Talks presents Shopping Slobs.
And there was quite a lot of people there actually, and there was multiple people.
Maybe a little bit too much.
But then what did you want to worry about?
Shapes of wind.
A tale about shoes. According to market research conducted by OnePoll.com, women spend more than 40 hours each year shopping for shoes and a whopping 100 hours shopping for clothes. So let's see how we act when engaging in one of our favorite pastimes. There's something exhilarating about shopping. The average woman owns 19 pairs of shoes, though Imelda Marcos was said to have owned over 2,700 pairs of shoes at the time of her death, but we digress. So what happens when you enter your local shoe department? Well, regrettably, many of them look like this, or like this. When asking a local retailer about items that get returned, shoes was included in the list. That's right, worn shoes. In a study conducted by Body Labs, 50% of the shoes that people purchase are returned. So imagine the retailer that has to deal with this every day, only to know that there's a high likelihood that one pair out of every 2 pairs of shoes sold is going to be returned. The reason cited for the return: poor fit. Ouch! In an online article on BuzzFeed, different retailers shared stories about their customer experiences, and we found this one to be incredible. Apparently, this customer, after having worn a knee-length suede boot for over a year, returned to the store wearing the boots. One of the boots was ripped down the side, being held up by a rubber band. She wanted to return the boots. When the retailer denied her request, she made such a scene that the retailer ended up refunding her money. When we asked a local retailer what the top items were for returns, we were told shoes, after 5 dresses, and one surprising item: belts. That's right, B-E-L-T-S, belts. Here's the return rack at a local retailer. When we inquired about what happens after items are returned, we were told that soiled and damaged items are written off and other merchandise is returned to the floor if not worn. So what does a day of shopping look like? Well, we walked around a local retailer and this is what we found. In just about every department, clothes were not returned to their rightful places. And according to these retailers, they have to pay someone to return the displays to their original order over and over and over again. And don't be part of a mall retailer with their expansive food courts, because then you'll see the remnants of those meals on the floors, on the carpets, and yes, on the clothes themselves. When we asked an expert retailer that had been in the field for many years what we would expect to see in a children's department, we were told something like this: items laying around as though children are just turned loose to play, or better yet, going into fitting rooms and finding dresses strewn across the floor, even when there are hooks that these items could be placed on. And so it's no matter when you get home with a high ticket item and there's stains on it, because you don't know how many times it's been on the ground after someone who tried it on just simply put it there. I don't think the average customer realizes that things maybe need to be laundered or even dry cleaned before you wear them, simply because that item could have been laying on the floor before you ever got it home to wear it. Just look at this.
The more startling number is the e-commerce return rate, 25% compared to 8% for a physical store. And this is what that can look like. Mountains of cardboard and plastic packaging with valuable merchandise inside.
So retailers really aren't equipped to take the product back.
The typical retailer hasn't invested in this yet, and you'll see all their returns come back. They pile up, they sit, and it often quarterly or twice a year they might liquidate them for pennies on the dollar or even potentially destroy them.
Tobin Moore is the CEO of Optoro, which helps companies deal with a tsunami of returns.
We have now these new racks behind me here where we put bulk cases.
This massive warehouse outside Nashville is one of 36 Optoro uses across the country, processing merchandise for sellers like American Eagle, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, and others. Workers use Optoro's software to check in the merchandise, ensuring a refund, then relisting the product for a new sale. These items will never go back to the retailer's warehouse. They're held here until sold again.
The volume here is incredible. On just these 2 racks, there are more than 120,000 items that came in as returns, and most will leave this warehouse as a new sale within a week.
Their house here, it's the most efficient thing. Wherever that good comes back, if you can get it back to stock from there, it means less shipments, less touches, less waste.
In Houston, Abby McDonald used Happy Returns, a service that collects customers' unwanted goods for hundreds of companies that sold them. It's postage and box free.
Did you already start on mine?
I did. I have the code.
Perfect.
A QR code is all you need. McDonald sent back a dress she bought online from the women's clothing company, Draper James.
And it's close to my office, which made it easy to pop out at lunch and drop it off here for free.
Paper Source locations like this are among 3,800 collection points nationwide, an average of 20 returns from multiple sellers shipped in a single box, reducing waste and expediting turnaround time. Not everything is resold. Almost 6 billion tons of returned items will end up in landfills after the holiday season. If an item is the wrong fit for a consumer, finding the right one for that returned product is key.
Our technology connects every returned item, no matter the condition, to its next best home as efficiently as possible.
Minimizing shipments and getting the product back into stock quickly. A win for buyer, seller, and the planet.
Just hired Mr. Flywheel as a floor walker.
Well, Martha, we have enough floor walkers.
Please.
However, if you desire, what experience have you had in a department store?
I was a shoplifter for 3 years.
Now, we've all heard about the practice of shoplifting. Well, what we now see is a more violent type of theft called smash and grab. And while overall retail crime has decreased, what is alarming is the surge in organized retail crime. According to the Retail Industry Leaders Association, retailers estimate nearly $70 billion worth of products was stolen in 2019. Retail crime isn't just a loss to the retailers, but it's actually a loss to the public, because when they lose money, they have to lay off workers, and that results in a loss in wages and benefits to the actual workers. And of course, when you have decreased workers, you have decreased income tax, you have decreased sales tax and tax revenues, and so the local governments suffer because of retail theft.
We want to talk to you about theft. Some people are saying theft in California is legal now. Is this true?
Well, technically not legal, but not enforced is probably the better way to put it. Certainly if it's less than $950. So with the passage of Prop 47 about 8 years ago, what we did was we looked at most property crimes and that were being prosecuted at that time, and said many of them that were felonies are now misdemeanors, and many that were misdemeanors are essentially nothing, and there's a lack of enforcement for them.
So what happens if somebody steals at a store, or if somebody steals?
Yeah, and one of the core areas to understand here is that there's this used to be what was called petty theft with a prior. In other words, if someone steals and they have any amount of property on them when they're caught by law enforcement, if they have a history of that same type of theft, they could be charged with a felony, hence petty theft with a prior. And nowadays what happens, and we've seen it with some of these swarm smash and grab robberies in stores where the 15 people are running out with stolen property, 9 are detained, let's say. 2 of them have a large amount of money of theft that's been stolen, property that's been stolen, and the other 7 have $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 worth of property. They're only going to be charged with a misdemeanor depending on the circumstances. And in California, the way it works is that essentially misdemeanors have very little consequence, certainly as it relates to property crime.
So can you explain very little consequence what it means?
Well, the practical reality is that most retailers have learned that if they call law enforcement for a theft of less than $950, that either law enforcement will not respond, or if they respond, at most what they will do is issue a citation to the person who is stealing that property. So the practical reality is most retailers in California has some type of policy telling the employees not to report low-level property crimes. And that's for a number of understandable reasons. One is there's no consequence for if they do report it. And number 2, if the person is emotionally disturbed in some way, fights with their employees, injures an employee, something like that happens, then oftentimes what will happen is the store will be sued by the person that they attempted to arrest. So from a liability standpoint, oftentimes retailers are just saying...
So the thief can actually go and sue the store,
yes, yes.
And the stores are afraid of that lawsuit.
Right, right. We're a very litigious society here in California, and the stores and their insurance carriers really are afraid with being sued for trying to stop a crime that has little or no consequence.
You mentioned when somebody has a misdemeanor, they would get a ticket.
Right.
What does that mean? Would they end up having to pay a fine? Would they end up going to prison, or would they?
The practical reality is over the last several years, they would get a citation citing them into court, and they probably would never show up to court, and there probably would never be any consequence for the most part. And depending on what city you're talking about, San Francisco, Los Angeles, there's little or no consequence for theft. And so what we've done is we've convinced a large number of people here in the state that there is no consequence for their action. And so we have this increased lawlessness that comes from it. The view is, I can take other people's property because nothing will happen to me. And if you do that enough times, and we've seen it, there's been a number of different studies that has been done that said we have the same people that are stealing over and over again, and when they're caught, there's no consequence.
And what is the impact of this? Is this going to affect us in any bigger ways?
When we turn on the news, or turn on YouTube, and you see these smash and grabs taking place, or large-scale thefts, and then you have Walgreens, let's say, closing their stores, or Starbucks more recently saying we're going to close stores in certain areas because we can't deal with the crime that's associated with it.
Some people and some newspapers are actually looking at the data, and they're saying that crime is not up.
Right.
Despite all the videos that we see on social media. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's wrong. The data is incorrect at this point, and let me explain what I mean. When Prop 47 decriminalized certain types of drug crimes and low-level property crimes, it changed the way we report crimes. In other words, if it was a misdemeanor before, it became essentially nothing. Many felonies became misdemeanors. So when people say they feel in their communities as though their neighbors' houses are being burglarized, they see videos of Walgreens having as many as 20 different shopliftings in a day, and then they ask the question, where's the reports of this? When we look at the numbers, why isn't the data following that? And what this goes back to is this this problem with retailers not fully reporting the crimes. In other words, if there's a disincentive to report for a retailer, in other words, you might, if you call law enforcement, number one, they might not respond. Number two, if they do respond, they'll only issue a citation at most, and there'll be no consequence. So retailers have kind of shifted the way they deal with that.
Black Friday.
Black Friday shopping practices starkly illustrate the democratization of indulgent consumerism. Perhaps this is where the term doorbuster came from?
The history behind Black Friday. Every year Black Friday begins on the 27th November, the day after Thanksgiving. Many believe the term Black Friday was a result of shop owners, when recording their details by hand, they noted profits in black and losses in red. Most of the year, shops were in red, however went into black the day after Thanksgiving. This is not actually how the name came to be. The term Black Friday was first associated with the financial crisis. Two Wall Street financiers, Fisk and Gould, bought a significant amount of U.S. gold, in the hope the overall price would soar and be able to sell it for huge profits. Friday, 24th of September, 1869, in what became referred to as Black Friday, the U.S. gold market crashed and Fisk and Gould's actions left Wall Street bankrupt. It was not until later years that the post-Thanksgiving period became Black Friday. Police officers in Philadelphia were first to link Black Friday to the post-Thanksgiving period in the 1950s. Large crowds of tourists and shoppers came to the city the day after Thanksgiving for the Army-Navy football game, creating chaos and shoplifting opportunities. Police officers in the city weren't able to take the day off and instead had to work long shifts to control the carnage, using the term Black Friday to refer to it. As the name spread throughout Philadelphia, some of the city's merchants disliked the negative connotations and unsuccessfully tried to change it to Big Friday. Black Friday later became known in print, after an advertisement was published in the American Philatelist magazine in 1966. By the 1980s, the term was known across the nation and retailers soon linked it to their post-Thanksgiving sales. Today, Black Friday is the USA's biggest shopping event of the year, when shops cut their prices, in order to boost profits. Amazon introduced the concept to the UK in 2010, promoting discounts to consumers. Black Friday has grown significantly since, throughout the UK. The concept has also emerged in other countries across the globe. In Mexico, they call their version El Buen Fin, meaning the good end, while in the United Arab Emirates, shops cut prices on what they call White Friday. To help improve sales and deal with competition, retailers now choose to run their sales across an extended period, rather than the traditional 24 hours. In recent years, a number of promotions have started in the days building up to Black Friday, continuing until Cyber Monday.
So, does Black Friday lead to violence? According to an interview with a Greater Manchester police officer from the UK, yes, as he recounted a woman suffering from a broken wrist and a head injury after a falling TV confrontation with a fellow shopper. Also, in research conducted by Raymond and Smith, the violent shopper comes from a wide spectrum of ethnicities, genders, and age background.
Oh, there we go. There we go. People put this bucket out and look out for the fuck, innit? Like you say, no security. It's gone. Oh my days!
According to research by Thomas and Peters, Black Friday for them is described as a chaotic disorder and the potential violence, which has become romanticized as a family holiday ritual in the United States. The violence and disorder that is now synonymous with Black Friday is symptomatic of a broader culture of narcissism, which remains unchecked. In the United States, there have been 12 reported deaths and 117 injuries attributed to Black Friday since 2006.